Hey, Mike Matthews here, muscleforlife.com. Welcome back to the podcast. Sorry that I've been off a few weeks, at least off the podcast. The holidays are a little bit crazy and just I was doing what I could to keep up with all the random balls I'm kind of juggling right now between book launch stuff and some MFL projects and workout app and Legion and blah, blah, blah. So podcast got neglected for a few weeks, but here we go. So first, I just want to say Happy New Year. Hopefully you had a great holiday, friends and family, ate a bunch of food, didn't gain too much weight. I made it out pretty good, actually. I think I gained like 1 pound or something, which I just dieted for a week and that's that. Mainly, like I kind of just practice what I preach. What I was doing is just saving most of my calories for those random dinners that I had to go to or whatever. So I would just kind of eat protein throughout the day, and then here comes dinner. And some of them, a couple of the dinners were a bit absurd. Actually, I'm very surprised that I didn't gain more weight even after. I mean, like it started with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, I ate until I was in pain. I couldn't even move. I was just lying on the couch, trying not to move because it was painful. I mean, I was just in pain just sitting there. But if I moved, it was even, it made it even worse. Absurd amount of food. And then there was like a party at my parents' house, and I think I ate 8 plates of dessert. That was it. I ate protein throughout the day and 8 plates of dessert, which wasn't to the point of pain, but my stomach was thoroughly full. But even with those massive overfeedings, which I mean, I had to have eaten at least 8,000 calories in those 2 individual meals alone. And there were a couple other dinners where I didn't go crazy. I ate a good amount, but didn't go crazy. Over the course of the next few days after those crazy meals, I didn't really see a difference in my body. I was a bit surprised. I was expecting worse. I mean, yeah, they were very, very high carb meals, so that helps, but there was a fair amount of fat. I guess they just weren't fatty enough. But I mean, I gotta say though, no, there must have been at least 200-300 grams of fat in each of those meals, and 200 grams of fat, that's a pound of fat. I mean, if you were to eat 200 grams of dietary fat and it would be stored 100% as body fat, which it doesn't get stored 100%, but a large percentage just kind of gets stored as body fat. That's a pound of fat. So I guess I got lucky I don't know. I was a bit surprised. Also, one point, actually, I'm going to look into this. It's kind of just a random, I don't know if it really fits into an article anywhere, but I'm just curious how long it takes for your body to synthesize fat. It takes time to build muscle, for instance. Same thing with body fat. Like, okay, so I ate 8,000 calories and my body probably, let's say it processed all of that I probably couldn't even process. A fair amount of that just went right through the small intestines unprocessed for sure. But let's say it processed like 5,000 calories over the course of 8 to 10 hours. At what point can I say that fat synthesis is done, where I know that I've gained the fat I'm going to gain, there's no more? I feel like I've seen this in overfeeding studies, but the number's not coming to me. If I were to take a guess, I would say I don't remember, 18 hours. So I don't know. I'm going to look into that because I'm kind of curious. It's just almost like a point of mental, where you go all in and then you're going, all right, well, at least there's a point where you're not going to get any fatter from that meal. You've gained the fat you're going to gain, and now, you're done. Anyways, that was my holiday. I hope you had a great holiday too. Ate a bunch of food. I mean, that's I say enjoy yourself in the holidays. I mean, I did that a couple times. Not like I was doing that every day or multiple times a week even. It was a couple, and I didn't feel bad about it. I loved it. I mean, that was what my plan was, to go. I didn't care if that meant I had to diet for a week or two after. I was just going to enjoy myself and, eat a bunch of food I don't normally eat, basically. And that's what whenever people write me about, a little bit anxious about the holidays and gaining weight, that's what I recommend, is that use the calorie saving kind of method I was talking about, and just don't. Where it becomes a problem is when you start eating big breakfasts, lunches, and dinners multiple days a week. When you start off with a 3,000 calorie breakfast and then do a 3,000 calorie lunch and then a 7,000 calorie dinner, and you do that multiple times a week, that becomes a problem. You can gain quite a bit of fat quite quickly doing that, especially if you're not exercising. Like, if you take a couple weeks off the gym and then just eat absurd amounts of food, you can gain a good, in 2 weeks, you could easily gain a good probably 6-7 pounds of fat if you really tried. So I minimize that damage by just, doing a few all-in type meals, saving my calories, and also usually like on the days after, like after I ate all of that food, on those really high calorie days, or those high calorie meals, the following days, I ate, I think like after Thanksgiving, I maybe ate 1,000 calories the next day. I think I just ate my protein and a little bit of fat or a little bit of carb. I don't remember, but it was essentially I ate like 200 grams of protein basically, and a little bit of carb and fat that kind of goes with what I was eating, and felt I actually was like semi full all day. I woke up full. That doesn't happen usually, and then so I just kind of was like, it was almost like a protein sparing modified fast. If you've ever heard of that, it's kind of more of a medical type of dietary routine where you're really just eating protein. I think they do it usually with very obese people, but so I did that, and so you can do that where, okay, so you ridiculously overeat for a day, and then you undereat for a day. I mean, there are types of diets. There's diets out there. There's like an intermittent fasting. I guess it's not really even intermittent fasting. It's like I think it's called 5-2 diet, right? Where it's like 5 days a week you're eating food, 2 days you're not. Not a very good diet if you're physically active, if you're going to the gym, because those 2 days a week you're not eating food, you're not going to want to train on those days because you're going to just have no energy and not feel good. But even if you saved those 2 days, let's say you're training Monday through Friday and you're eating and then you don't eat on the weekends, your Monday and Tuesday workouts are going to suck. Maybe they'll be okay if you're working out later in the day and you have a good amount of food in you come Monday. And, by the afternoon you've eaten maybe a couple thousand calories, something like that by the time you train. But still, I wouldn't recommend necessarily the 5-2 diet. But my point is, you can do that. You can not eat food for 24 hours if you just sort of probably at about the 12-hour, well, I'd say probably about the 14 to 16 hour of fasting, you'd want some BCAAs or leucine to just elevate protein synthesis rates. And then you could probably do that every couple hours and not eat for 24 hours and be totally fine. You're not going to lose any muscle. You're not going to run into any real problems. So you can do that as well. It's not really a matter of starving yourself. I don't look at it like that. When I was going, okay, well, I ate so much food yesterday, I'm just gonna eat a very small amount of food the next day. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna starve myself. In fact, like I said, I was pretty much full all day. I wasn't even hungry. It was more just to try to balance out my weekly intake, at least get it somewhere closer to where I'd like it to be. Where my weekly maintenance calories are probably about 20,000. I would say, give or take, given my body weight, my body composition, and my activity level. So I like to kind of have my weekly calories come out to be about 20,000. Some weeks it's a little bit over, some weeks it's a little bit under. And so if I'm eating 8,000 calories in a day, or even a little bit more, then I'm going to go low calorie the next day probably. And then I went about 2,000 calories, a little bit less the following day. Just so over the course of those 3 days, where normally, my intake maybe, let's say, would be like 10,000 calories over those 3 days, maybe it's 12,000 calories. And a lot of those extra calories are from carbs, which are burned off and used in other ways. And so the net effect is my body composition, like in the mirror, I didn't see any difference. I still had the same vascularity, same body. I didn't look any different despite, eating so much food that, and I can eat a lot. I'm actually confused that because my body, I can not eat I can fast for long periods of time and not get hungry and feel totally fine. I can even, go out and play, I'd say moderate activity. I haven't played intense sports, but go out like, I've gotten into golf recently. So go out on the driving range, hit a bunch of balls after fasting for a bit, and I just don't get hungry. It just doesn't bother me. But then at the same time, I can eat a ton of food in a sitting and be moderately full. Like, I can eat let's say 2,500 calories in a meal and be like, okay, I guess I've eaten enough. I'm full. I could eat more. I could fit more. So how exactly that works, I don't know. But so with that type of, it's not even really an appetite. It's just the capacity for eating food. I was eating until at least a couple of those meals until I simply just couldn't fit any more food in me. So if you can push it that hard and then just kind of make up for it over the next couple of days and look the exact same, and my weight is the exact same, I weigh about 190. It goes up and down, 189, 190, 191, depending on water retention and whatever. But by the end of, when all the holiday stuff was done, the New Year's dinner, all that stuff, within a week, I was back to my normal weight, That's pretty cool. And you can do the same thing. You just, it does take a little bit of moderation. It sounds like I have controlled bouts of immoderation. I'm not just like all over the place for 3 weeks. Then that's when, you can, even then though, you don't have to, if it happens, it happens. And so what? You diet for a month to get rid of the fat, and now you're back to normal. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't really matter. All right, so all the holiday stuff behind us, let's get into the meat of the podcast. And in this podcast, I want to talk about two things. One is the concept of slow cutting, which is, it's not really, I guess that's just kind of a colloquial term for it. But basically, I get asked fairly often if I think it's better to slowly taper your calories down when you're wanting to lose fat, or just jump into a moderate deficit and go from there. And then, maybe at some point, depending on metabolic adaptation, maybe you have to reduce calories further, maybe not, kind of depends on your body. But really the point is it better to slowly taper calories down or just jump into a decent deficit and, get the ball rolling like that? And the other thing that I want to talk about is actually it's a question that I got asked by a guy named John. And I've been asked this before, and usually just kind of, shoot off personal response, but I've been getting it enough where I thought it'd be maybe a worthy podcast topic. And that's the topic of surrounding yourself with the right people, or that concept of surrounding yourself with the right people, and how the people around you, how does it affect your mood, your motivation, your goals, your willingness to work, and I guess kind of just your overall happiness and chances for success, and just give some of my experiences on it and some of my thoughts. Okay, so let's start with this subject of slow cutting, quote unquote. Is it better to taper your calories down and lose fat slowly, or is it better to just jump into a larger deficit and lose fat faster? And my standard go-to strategy for fat loss is I want to lose fat as quickly as possible. Basically, I want and without causing negative, without losing muscle, without losing a bunch of strength, without feeling miserable, and all the things that come with starvation dieting. So I don't want to obviously starve myself. And that's you want to lose fat the fastest, eat 500 calories a day. There you go. You're going to lose fat fast. You're also going to lose muscle and you're going to feel like shit, but you're going to lose fat really quickly. So what I do is I am using a moderate deficit, 20-25%. Personally, I actually always just kind of keep it at 25%, but this is something you have to part of the just this whole fitness game is learning your body. There are fundamental principles that guide you and that keep you from making stupid mistakes, but then there are quite a few variables that are just individual that you have to experience for yourself. I know guys that do great with a 25% deficit, like me. My body does totally fine on it, and I've just dieted so many times, and I stay pretty lean. I kind of maintain 7 to 8%. I'd say probably closer to 8% is kind of my maintenance, just kind of hanging out around here, eating about 2,800 calories a day, with a couple days over, maybe a couple days under, depends on what I feel like doing, and I've dieted down to 6.5. Well, maybe I never made it to 5, but I've made it to the 6% range several times for photo shoots and such. So I have enough experience with my body to know that 25% deficit is totally fine. But some people, guys and girls that I speak with, they don't do so well on it. They just need a smaller deficit because, maybe something 15-20%, because if they go higher, they really start to run into hunger issues, craving issues, energy issues, mood issues, and that's something you have to learn. But I recommend that if you're not sure what works best, start with a 25% deficit or a 20% deficit and see how your body responds. And you can adjust things. I wouldn't go higher than 25% because then you start getting pretty close to BMR, and most people are going to find if you just dropped your intake to BMR, that's not going to do. Most people are going to run into problems. You're going to be hungry, you're going to be angry, you're going to be your workouts are going to suck, you're going to lose strength, and so. That's on the deficit point. That's what I like to do. And the reason why I want to lose fat as quickly as possible is, there are a few reasons. One is that the longer you're in a deficit, the more your metabolism slows down, which means the more you have to then reduce your energy intake or increase your energy output. to continue losing fat. And that's not a huge problem. If you're slow cutting, if you're, let's say you start with a 10% deficit and you see what you can get in fat loss for there, and then you reduce it a little bit, maybe you reduce it by 5% and 5%, 5%. Yes, your metabolism slows down, but you're not ruining your metabolism. You're not damaging it. You're just, you're making the process take longer, and you're not going to gain that much. Like, I've done this before. I've tried it. I don't see that much of a difference in my training between a 10% deficit and a 20 or 25% deficit. Yes, there is a slight difference. I'm going to probably lose a rep or two, on the 20, 25% deficit versus the 10%. But my energy levels are still high. My workouts are still good. I feel good throughout the day. It's not, if there were a big difference, if I felt way better on a 10% deficit, than a 20, 25, I probably would slow cut. I probably would start, with a very mild deficit. Some people even start as low as like a 5% deficit, which can be tricky to make sure that you don't accidentally, because you have a small margin for error there. If you're running on a 5% deficit and you overeat by 100 calories, I mean, that could be your 5% deficit. Or if you're a girl or if you're a guy, that could be half of your deficit right there. So it also can be a little bit tricky in terms of tracking, because if you're running a small deficit, the scale, you're going to have to weigh yourself every day and then take average, which is not a bad idea in general, actually, but take an average weight every 7 to 10 days and really keep an eye on things, because you can accidentally overeat or exercise a little bit, not burn as much calories as you were anticipating when you were planning your meal, planning your diet, and you can not really lose any fat for a couple weeks and not quite know, because you're not expecting dramatic changes. So the metabolic adaptation point is not a big problem, but it is something that you're going to have to deal with. And when you're slowly reducing, you're just kind of like, you're slowly, weight loss is just, you're depriving your body of food. That's all you're doing when you're losing fat. And when you're just depriving it just enough to get fat loss a little bit going, and then you're trying to reduce it a little bit more and a little bit more, it's just trickier. And really the point is, it's just kind of unnecessary, because you can jump into a larger deficit and you're still going to have metabolic slowdown to some degree. It'll probably happen a little bit faster, but you're going to, in that time period, like if you just jump right into 25% deficit and you're exercising and you're eating enough protein and you're not doing too much cardio, you're doing all the things that you should be doing, you probably will get a good, I would say, 6 weeks of fat loss out of that before you even have to before you have to change anything, before you have to exercise more or eat less. And some people, they don't even have to, they just start on that deficit. Some people, I've just seen in research that some people's metabolisms are more resilient than others, meaning that they just can, they're not as prone to the slowdown as others, and some people's metabolisms just slow down faster. So that's also a point you're going to experience with your body, what you can get away with. But I've run into quite a few. Usually it's with guys. It's not so much with girls, and that's probably hormonal. And just muscle. Guys that have more muscle are going to do better. But they'll go into that 25% deficit and they'll stay there and they'll get as lean as they want, and then they'll just reverse diet out of it, and that's it. It can be that simple. So another point why I want to just lose fat as quickly as possible is the more time that you're in a deficit, even if it's a slight deficit, it means the more time you're not building muscle, and you're not going to see much in the way of strength gains either. This applies to most people that are new to weightlifting or new to heavy weightlifting. Like if you were to if you've been doing some sort of high rep kind of isolation magazine type workout for a while, and you switch to a more heavy barbell type routine like starting strength or 5x5 or my bigger leaner stronger program or something like that, you definitely can build muscle while losing fat. And if you're new to working out, you can as well. But if you're an experienced weightlifter and you've put in a good amount of time on the barbells and you're pretty strong and you lift heavy weights, you're not going to be building any muscle to speak of while you're in a deficit. And when you're slow cutting, if you slow cut for, let's say, 5 months to lose to, let's say you're 15% and you want to go to 7%, it takes you 5 months to get there. In those 5 months, you're really not going to build any muscle to speak of. And your strength is going to be pretty stagnant through that time. You might be able to make some strength gains, and maybe you'll build a little bit of muscle, but not nearly as much as if you were aggressive with your fat loss. And let's say you went from 15% to 7% in 3 months by being more aggressive, and then you can reverse diet out of it. And over the next 2 or 3 months, you've reverse dieted. You're now, let's say, in a maintenance or even in a surplus, depending on what you want to do. But once you start that reverse diet process, you'll see that your body responds very quickly. Your strength starts coming up again. You start to you can build muscle more effectively again. And so, it depending on, if you are in my position where really, I mean, I've kind of maxed out my genetic potential in terms of natural muscle growth. If I really cared, it's possible I could gain about 10 more pounds. I think my FFMI is, which I'll link in an article down below if you're not familiar with that, but it's about 23, 24. It was about 23 a year ago. So, and I've gained a little bit of size then. So it's probably about 24 right now. And really, when you start getting 24, 25, that's all you can expect in terms of natural muscle growth, unless you have outstanding genetics for it. And even then, you're not going to see much higher than 25. When you start seeing, 26, 27, 28 and higher is really steroids is what you're looking at. So if you're in my position, and I'm not going to really gain much more muscle, and I'm not really looking to gain much, I don't really want it. I'll take some more calves because genetically my calves were the worst ever, and they're decent now, but I'll take some more calves, and take some more shoulders because natty shoulders are always too small. It's just standard. And that's really it. I don't want bigger arms. I don't want a bigger chest. I think my back's pretty good. My upper legs are good. I'm already having trouble. Like certain brands of jeans, forget it. I can't wear them. If anything is like a skinnier or even a straight cut, skinny, forget. I'm not that I even really want to wear it anyway. Straight cut is usually a problem. Usually I can't. They just get stuck in my thighs, or they look like leggings. It looks ridiculous. So I don't really want more upper legs as well, because it starts to become just impractical, where your legs are always rubbing together everywhere you go and you can't wear the clothes you want to wear and whatever, right? So in my case, slow cutting could make sense. If I had a problem with a larger deficit, I could just run a smaller deficit over time, because I'm not really going to build much muscle anyway, and I can preserve as much muscle and strength as possible. Okay, I could see that. Personally, I still would rather just be aggressive about it and then get my calories back up to a maintenance type level, because I like my training best when I'm at maintenance. I just feel strong in the gym. I'm able to progress in my strength, but you're probably not in that position. You probably are still looking to improve your physique, add some size, gain a fair amount of strength. And if that's the case, slow cutting is just not the way to go. And this is just one of the big problems that I see, or one of the big mistakes that I see people make. And my brother's a good example. He's made this mistake for quite a while now, and I tell him about it, but he doesn't listen. So, and that is that his bulks are too short, because he just gets way out of hand with his calories, and maybe he's drinking as well. I don't know, but he just gains fat way too quickly when he bulks. So maybe he's in a surplus for 2 months, and so for 2 months he's able to gain strength and build a little bit of muscle and get things rolling. But then he just gets too fat, and then he has to cut, and then his cuts take too long because he's not strict on his diet, and he skips workouts here and there and whatever. So he'll now cut for, let's say, 4 or 5 months, and to lose, let's say, 15 pounds. So he'll go a little bit too high on his bulks too. He'll start at about 20%, then he'll get down to 14%, let's say 13% on his cut, and then stop there, and then go back to the bulk, and then go back to 20% within a couple months. So basically, when you look at his year is maybe 3 or 4, let's say 4 months of being in a surplus and 8 months of being in a slight deficit. That sucks for building muscle and for building a physique. You want that the other way around. You want to be in a surplus for 8 months and where you're building muscle, you're building strength, because when you're bulking, I haven't really seen this in any research, but I definitely have experienced it myself and just seen it anecdotally. When you're in a surplus, you get into a rhythm. There's a momentum that builds, especially for me, I would notice it after about 6 to 7 weeks of being in a surplus, a steady slight surplus. I really start to build up momentum in my training, where I'm adding reps every week, and I'm feeling strong and have a lot of energy. And maybe even in a little bit of a shorter period, which it could be related to glycogen stores have really topped out, and they're really just maxed out all the time. But I would suspect that there's something with the nervous system as well, where recovery is going to be at your highest when you're in a surplus. So, I don't know exactly what the factors are, but I've seen that. And but it takes a little bit to get going. That's also why I don't recommend that people bulk for a week and cut for a week, because you never really get into a rhythm with your bulking where you are making steady progress and you're not gaining very much body fat. You're gaining a little bit, but you're gaining just as much muscle, and you're seeing a lot of strength gains in the gym. But it takes a little bit to get there. So if you're only bulking for 2 months, yeah, you're going to experience it. Maybe you'll have a month of that where you're really starting to get into a groove, but then you're too fat, and then you're running into problems where you can't build muscle as effectively when you're fat. And well, I say fat, but once you start getting about, let's say 15, 16%, you can start running into some issues that get in the way of muscle growth. It's not that you can't build muscle, but it's ideally for building muscle, you'd stay probably in the 10 to 15% or 10 to 16, 17% range. And I'll link an article down below where I explain why. So my brother, he makes that mistake of where he starts getting into a groove, but then he has to cut. And then his cuts take way too long. He doesn't gain really anything in the way of muscle and strength now at this point because he's been lifting about a year and a half. And see, he could get away with this in the beginning, and that's also what kind of messes with people. In the beginning, if you're doing some things right, if you're training right, if you're eating decently, you can make these mistakes. And he did make these mistakes in the beginning, but it didn't matter because he was building muscle and strength while he was in a deficit. So he thought like, hey, whatever, I can just go absurd and enjoy, eat all this food, get fat, and then go into a deficit, feel fine, train hard, get stronger, build muscle, who cares? But now he's in the intermediate stage where you can't do that anymore. You have to be a lot more on point with your diet, and you have to make sure that you are not sitting in a slight deficit for long periods of time, or you're going to just get stuck. And the last reason why I enjoy rapid weight loss over rapid fat loss, or why I recommend rapid fat loss over slow cutting, is the longer you're in a deficit, the more likely you are to just kind of fall off the wagon. And I can use my brother's example again, where it's just not that he doesn't run into any major issues of hunger or cravings, but it's just a fatigue point where he gets sick of eating the same. He's not a person to cook for himself or be creative with his meals or anything. So I think he was eating like Chipotle every day for 3 months when he was cutting or something. So you just get sick of it. You want to eat different foods, and you start to feel the effects, a little bit of the energy effects in your training. You're getting sick of your training just kind of being stagnant, and you're more likely to just give up and start eating a bunch again, which is what he does. He cuts for a bit, and then he's just like, oh, whatever, I can't do that. I can't take this anymore. So then he starts his reverse diet, which quickly just flies out of control and becomes full-on bulk. And then it's back into bulk mode and gain fat too fast mode, and then be like, well, shit, I guess I got to cut again. So I find that if you're aggressive and it's easier to really keep your discipline in and stay strict on your numbers and make sure you're doing everything right for shorter periods of time. Like I would prefer to go 100% all in for 2 months or 3 months than like 30% for 5-6 months for sure, because the more time you enter into the process, the more chances there are to mess it up, basically. So that's more of a psychological point, and some people don't have a problem with that. Some people are they'll especially more experienced weightlifters and experienced dieters that are just really grooved in on tracking and planning food intake, and it's just not a big deal. They can they could be in a slight deficit for a year because they track and plan all their macros anyway, and what's the difference to them if they're eating it's just numbers. And that's I guess I'm kind of in that boat, but most people are not so much like that. And that's why I recommend just being more aggressive with it and getting it over with in a sense. And in case you're wondering if being in a larger deficit, like a 25% deficit, is too much and going to cause too much muscle loss and strength loss, I can tell you anecdotally it's not just with my body, but I've worked with thousands of people at this point and never run into that problem once, actually. But it's also backed up by a bit of research. There's one study in particular, which I'll link down below, which was conducted with it was with sprinters or with athletes. Let me look. Yeah, it was national, international level track and field jumpers and sprinters that with low levels of body fat, around 10%. So they were lean already. And you had two groups, 300 calorie deficit and a 700 calorie deficit on a daily with a high protein diet. And the 750 calorie deficit group obviously lost quite a bit more fat than the 300 calorie deficit. This is after 4 weeks. They're on this diet for 4 weeks with very little muscle lost. So you can run a larger deficit, and especially if you are training correctly, you're still hitting heavy weights, you're still pushing to make gains, you still try to get stronger, whether you can or can't. You don't just like resign yourself to cutting so then you get lazy in the gym. Train hard. High protein diet. You don't go. I don't recommend low carb, and I'll link an article down below that explains why. So you have a higher carb, higher protein, moderate, lower fat diet. and you don't kill yourself with cardio, which I'll link an article down below where I talk about how much cardio is too much. And if you do all that, then you can lose quite a bit of fat quite quickly with a larger deficit and do totally fine. Not even, no negative consequences in terms of body composition or in mild consequences in terms of performance. You might lose a few reps, you might lose a few pounds on a couple lifts, but nothing major. And that kind of brings me to a last couple points on how I go about losing fat as quickly as possible. And so I mentioned high protein, high carbohydrate diet because I'm fairly lean, and when I'm cutting, I'm wanting to get really lean. I'm eating about 1.1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and I'll link an article down below to explain why. And my carbs are around 1 gram per pound, and my fats are around 0.2, 0.25, never higher than 0.3 grams per pound. And there's that combination of macros helps preserve muscle, preserve strength, and gives you enough dietary fat for your body to do everything it needs to do and prevent any sort of major hormonal disruptions. I also use different supplements that have been proven to help with fat loss, like caffeine, synephrine, yohimbine, green tea extract. And I'll link an article down below where I talk about fat burners and what works and what doesn't, and what I've found really actually does make a difference. And when you supplement properly, it does make a difference. I would say, based on just my experience with my body and how many times I've gained fat and lost fat, I would say that it's probably about 20% faster when I have my little supplement stack that I run, which is worth it to me. I mean, if that means that means instead of 8 weeks, I'm going 6 weeks, hey, that's worth it to me. And none of the supplements are that expensive. So, if I'm spending $80 to do that, then that's worth it to me. Also, I lift heavy weights when I'm cutting. I don't go high rep to really bring out definition. All that's all bullshit. Keep the heavy weightlifting in. Emphasize your heavy compound lifts because you want to still be telling your muscles, overloading them. You still want to be, stimulating them, telling your body like, hey, we need these muscles. Don't push them. And also heavy weightlifting burns quite a bit of calories, especially in the afterburn effect. As I kind of hate that phrase because it's so just overused in just bullshit marketing and stuff. But there is a significant amount of calories that your body's burning after a heavy weightlifting workout that helps support your weight loss efforts. And last but not least is I do high intensity interval cardio only. I don't do any steady state because sure, steady state burns energy and it can help you lose fat in that way, but high intensity interval cardio burns more fat, period. There's just no question. I'll link an article down below, but it's just been proven beyond the shadow of a doubt in multiple studies that high intensity interval cardio burns more fat in less time than steady state. And I know people are going to say that, oh, but high intensity, it's so hard on your nervous system and it's going to cause overtraining. No. Again, I've worked with thousands of people, and I don't know if I've ever once had anybody come back to me with my recommended, how I lay it out, where I don't do much cardio. I do maybe an hour and a half a week, never more than 2 hours a week, but maybe an hour and a half a week of high intensity interval cardio, and that's all I recommend. It boils down to 3 to 4 sessions of about 30 minutes or so, and that's it. And then I lift weights 4 to 5 times a week when I'm cutting as well. And that's my exercise routine. And my weightlifting sessions aren't that long either. It's 45 minutes, never longer than an hour. So I'm not killing myself with exercise. I'm pushing myself, but it's not it's not the type of routines that you'll see with fitness competitors where they're talking about doing 2 hours of cardio a day plus 2 hours of weightlifting plus a large deficit. That's a recipe for disaster. That's muscle loss. That's hormones are going to go out of control. You're going to feel terrible. Like, yeah, you're going to get lean, but it's going to be miserable. I'm not into that. And another point that's probably worth, just mentioning with the high intensity interval cardio and overtraining and stress on the body is, from what I've seen, the studies that have been used to support those statements that high intensity is so hard on the body and so hard on the central nervous system. If you look at the people in those studies, the ones that I've seen were like elite endurance athletes that are really pushing themselves as hard as they can go. I mean, that's not us. That's not me. I've been doing cardio, high intensity HIIT cardio regularly for like over a year now. And my cardio is very good. I have a very low resting heart rate in the 40s. and I never really see my heart rate go above 140 or so. Maybe it makes it to 150 toward the end of my workouts. And that's me pushing myself, but that's not me pushing myself like an elite cyclist, on an upright bicycle doing 60-second or 45-second just all out sprints. Like, that guy would crush me. So we have to also remember that our version, like what we're doing for high intensity interval cardio, is not necessary. It's not the same as what you'll see in some studies. There are some studies out there that again support it, in terms of being more effective for fat loss. But the studies that are conducted with just more average type people, the routines are not as intense. They're just not pushing themselves as hard as the high level athletes because they can't. So that's it for the rapid weight loss versus slow cutting. I highly recommend that you try being more aggressive with it if you've been a bit wary of larger deficits, or if you've kind of always just thought slow cutting was the way to go. Try the more aggressive approach, and I think you're going to be happy with the results, and you're going to find it just an overall more enjoyable experience. So let's get to this next topic here, and that is the subject of the people you have around you and how it affects you. So let me check out John's email here, see if there's anything else that I don't want to miss. So he's asking if I have anything to contribute in regards to maintaining my habits based on, because I write about habits, I talk about habits. I'm a very routine kind of habit-based person. I try to ritualize a lot of the things in my life so I don't have to think about, including food. I don't want to be thinking every meal what I'm going to eat. I have too many things to do, and I don't want to be thinking. I want to take out as much random motion out of my life as possible. So that means that every day I have an alarm that I wake up at a certain time, 6:15, and then I do some blog reading in the morning when if I'm in the bathroom or just getting ready, and then I'm at the gym by a certain time, I'm at a gym by a certain time, and sure, it fluctuates 10 or 15 minutes, but I'm here at the office a certain time, I leave at a certain time, I have dinner in a certain time, I do my cardio at a certain time. Everything I try to keep as regimented as possible because it actually takes my attention off things. I know, and I've been doing it enough now where I know that I'm going to, there's no I hope I wake up on time to get to the gym. No, I can't remember. Maybe the last time I actually missed the gym because of something like that was when my son was younger, and I slept 2 hours, and I just thought my workout's going to be terrible. What's the point? I might as well sleep more and then work out later kind of thing. But if it's not act of God kind of thing, I'm up, and there's just no question. I'm going to be at the gym by that time, and I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to be at the office by this time. And I don't get into bargaining with myself and, whatever kind of, if you ever, you have the voices or whatever that try to say, hey, maybe you should do this, or maybe, you need a bit more sleep, or that start making excuses for you and start justifying your whatever. I guess I've beaten them into submission. They just don't even try because they know that there's just no way. They're not going to take me off my routine. So I'm big on habits and big on routines. So John's asking if maintaining my habits, if surrounding myself with the right people is a part of that. And then what do I do if I feel that there are no people around me who embody these kind of qualities? If I feel my environment matches that and that kind of supports me, or if I just kind of feel alone and I have to just do it all myself, and I have no one else, no external support. And this is a good point. Good questions, because honestly, I don't hold myself up on a pedestal, and I am very much. I try to. It's not just a point of. I guess it's maybe a point of modesty, but it's more a point of. I think of meditations from Marcus Aurelius, where it's more a point of I'm not so presumptuous to think that what I'm doing, that I'm so special, and that that people should look up to me, and in however many years I'm going to be dead and gone, and everything that I've done, maybe it'll live on, maybe not, but at some point, people that are going to praise me or denounce me, they're gone too, and everything. It's all, so I wouldn't say my only gripe with Stoic kind of philosophy is it can be a bit apathetic and a bit pessimistic, but there are a lot of elements of it that I like, in just being too staying grounded. And so with that said, I basically I would love to have a network of people that I felt were like me, and I will meet. I do know some people, successful business people mainly, that live in a very similar way. They're very similar. They don't sleep that much. They wake up early. They do exercise. They're always working. They're always thinking about their business. And or if it's not business, it could be their work. It could be acting. A couple actors like that, or sports players or whatever. But I don't. I guess it's something that I wouldn't say that like I feel bad about it, but I wish that I had more of a network of people like that, because I don't. I don't feel like I have the support of a peer group. I have myself, essentially. I do my thing. And my wife supports me a lot in that she handles a lot of stuff, home stuff and kid stuff, so I can work. And I do take time, family time, obviously. But she's very good in handling our son Lennox and just giving me the time and space that I need to do my thing. And so that's very cool. But I don't have much in the way of I have a small circle of friends that I don't see that often. I mean, mainly my friends are the guys that work with me. And, like John says in the email, he says here that he kind of feels like the answer is just suck it up and become who you want. And yeah, I mean, he's saying that, he can't find enough media pertaining to the type of person he wants to be. He can read books, he can watch video logs and read more books and look up articles and, be on forums and stuff. But he says that he just feels like it's not the same as being surrounded by people who think the same way, or being in a group that kind of buzzes with the energy and motivation. Yeah, in one way it would be cool if I had that, but I don't. So I don't really look to external factors for motivation either. I guess I've internalized a lot of that by now, where I just have an ambition, I have a drive to do stuff, and it's not just to make money. If I were just driven by money, I would probably work 3 hours a day, and not that I'm like rich or something like that, but if I make more money than I need to live the lifestyle that I have right now, for sure. And, I could significantly upgrade that lifestyle if I wanted to, and still just be fine. So, it's not a money thing for me. It's that I just like to do stuff. I like to be engaged in actions that have purpose. I can't just sit around and watch TV every night. It's just, I get bored. I just sit there and I'm like, what am I doing? I can't even enjoy this. I do, I do enjoy like good movies and good TV shows, but it's just in moderation. I watch that stuff when I'm doing my cardio. Like my recommendations on my cool stuff, I watch all that stuff. It's just over time, and I do my little 25-minute cardio sessions a few days a week. So essentially what it boils down to is I'm watching like an hour and a half a week, and maybe I'll watch a movie with my wife on the weekend, kind of thing. And so in those small amounts, it's great. But that's just the way I am, and I'm just driven. I like to, I enjoy my work, and I like to get things done and create things and get them out there. And just for the sake of, personal, I don't even care to brag to people about it or get praise from people. I just like to do it. So that's what I do. It's just my life. It's not like, I have my work and then I have my other stuff. It's just kind of like it all just kind of blends together, basically. And, I guess it's also probably worth saying that another thing that I don't do is I don't look to other people for inspiration much, really. I mean, I do read a lot of books, and I do find a lot of that stuff enlightening and insightful, but I'm not looking to other people for motivation or to get going or do things. And I'm definitely not looking to other people for excuses or justifiers for failures or for, again, not to sound arrogant or whatever, but I definitely do not want to live like the average person. I don't want their type of life. I don't, from just happiness, from drive, from purpose, from money, the overall experience, not interested in that. So when I'm looking to how normal people are living, like, yes, it's normal to work 40 hours a week, or really, I mean, let's face it, most people actually work probably 20 hours a week, and the rest of the time is dicking around the internet and whatever. And then it's normal to do that. It's normal to watch a bunch of TV. It's normal to, want to spend a bunch of time with friends and all that stuff. Okay. But normal, also, when you take a look at the overall life, a normal kind of life would be depressing to me. So, my actions are and how I live is not normal, and that's just the way it is. So, I just, the reason why I say that is because I know people that feel like they should be, like they have the potential maybe to be more than normal, and they should be doing more than normal, but they get too caught up in their head and then just being normal and in feeling comfortable in, being a part of the herd in a sense, like where they, to themselves, they can justify their actions because everyone else is doing it, and that's just normal. And that dude, Mike, oh, he's just, who knows? He's not even human. He just, robotically goes through his life, and that's all he does is work. And so that I just don't, I don't look to other people to really like judge my doing things correct or doing things incorrectly. I look to what do I want to do, and what is that going to take? I don't care what other people are doing. I just want to know what's my goal, what am I going for, and realistically, what's that going to take? How much effort is that going to take? How much time is that going to take? What is it going to take? And I look at it more like that. And I always try to overshoot it and think that it's going to be harder than I think. It's going to take more work than I think. So I better be ready for that, and I better plan for that, because that can become demotivating in itself. If you're a habitual underestimator of effort and time, then it can be quite demotivating when you think, oh, that should be banged out. That shouldn't take me more than 100 hours, and then you're 300 hours in, and you're like, what the hell? I mean, I had that experience recently, trying to learn German. My wife's German. I wanted to learn a language. I thought that 300-400 hours would be enough to achieve the level of fluency that I wanted. I did that. I did all of Pimsleur's courses, and one or two others as well. And yeah, I learned a lot, but my vocabulary was crap. I wasn't at the point of fluency that I wanted to be at all. And I was pretty annoyed about it because I was putting a lot of time into it. And that's time that I could be spending on reading books or doing other activities that have value as well. So I try not to make those mistakes. I try to assume that things are always going to be harder and take longer, and just myself accept that I'm going to have to work really hard. There's no way around that. There's no trying to slide by or bullshit my way through it, or, half-ass things, cut corners, make excuses why, that part of it, I don't really have to do that. I'll just do these little parts. I try to really just be honest with myself and just go, look at it and go, what's that going to take? Am I willing to do that? Or really like, what's that going to take? Okay, how much more should I add to that to really make it realistic? Okay, am I ready for that? And is that what I'm ready to do? All right, good. And then do it. So basically, I mean, just to kind of close on John's question is, I think it's great if you can be surrounded by the right people. I think it's quite hard to find that. But then again, I'm not much of a networker. It's probably something I need to get better at or put more attention on, really, because it would help. But I've always just kind of been a person to just consider that I have, I'm going to get help along the way. I'm going to get support along the way. But ultimately, it's just going to be me pushing hard, working hard, and that's what it's going to boil down to. And, I wouldn't say like as a boss or whatever, I'm not really into trying to motivate people, and I don't think that you can even really do much in the way of motivating people. Or if somebody needs to be continually motivated, that's just a person that's just not going to do very well. I mean, the one for one, the most successful people I know were all strongly motivated internally. They didn't require external motivation. They didn't require pep talks and, sure, some things here and there, and they run into problems and they just get through it though. They're just tough individuals. They're tough, driven individuals that, when they fail, they don't get all hard on themselves, and, they just see it as a step along the way and they push through it, and they show up every day and they work just as hard, whether they feel like working or not. There's just that doesn't dictate anything. They don't allow their emotions to then change their routines or change what they know needs to get done. They just do it. And I guess I've kind of always been that way in things that I want to do, and maybe I'm just fortunate in that way. But I think it can be cultivated though as well, because it is just it's a mentality, and I think that people can definitely probably the most powerful thing you can do is change your mind about things. And I think that this is something that can be learned. So hopefully that my rambling is of any help. I hope you enjoyed that. And I'm going to wrap up the podcast here so it doesn't get too long. And I will see you next week.